Haruto Takashima was experimented on since a baby by his father to create a god. One day his academy gets suddenly attacked, making him see his childhood crush vanish in front of his eyes. Haruto gets immediately thirsty for revenge and enters a mecha robot to fight back. But in order to activate the mecha, he's requested to resign humanity. Haruto quickly quits being a human and destroys the enemy. But when he gets out, one of his classmates stabs him in the heart. Without knowing, Haruto became an immortal. In year 71, 70% of the human population lives in space due to the development of Dyson spheres, massive space cities. The world is divided into two main powers, Eris and the Dorsha Military Federation. However, lying between these two superpowers, there's a minor nation JIOR, which declared neutrality between the two forces and has now reached economic prosperity. Haruto is an ordinary 17-year-old high school student at Sakamori Academy. He's competing with her childhood friend and crush, Shoko, in an eating contest, but he deliberately loses to her. Shoko later asks Haruto why he lost on purpose. He expresses he doesn't like to compete and wishes that people could negotiate and share things instead of competing. The new transfer student, Elf, listens to it while passing by and makes fun of his ideals while bullying him. Later, while cleaning the school's shrine, Haruto musters up his courage and tries to confess to Shoko. But suddenly the Dorshan military sends their squadron of mecha to invade the area. They start bombarding it, turning the whole place into a battlefield. Haruto and Shoko decide to run and get shelter in the school. But at the same time, a mysterious mecha Valvrave emerges next to them. Haruto sees Shoko rush to save the man trapped in the car, but the enemy mecha fires at her, destroying everything. Haruto is shocked and starts to call for her, but his friends tell him to accept reality, she's already dead. Haruto cries in pain and anger, and then boards the Valvrave after deciding to avenge her death. After failing to activate the Valvrave multiple times, he notices a message on the display screen. The message questions if he is willing to resign to be a human being, and he gets injected with a substance after accepting it. The Valvrave finally activates, and Haruto dodges all enemy fires and attacks. He strikes his enemies with Valvrave's blade as a result. He destroys and blasts all of the enemy mechas. Everyone starts to praise Haruto, but on the other hand, he just mourns Shoko's death. On his way back to school, Elf appears and reveals his identity as a Dorshan military spy. He proceeds to stab Haruto in the chest and shoots him multiple times, but before leaving, Haruto rises back up again and attacks him from behind, biting his neck. Later, Haruto's friends discover the bodies of the unconscious Elf and Haruto. Suddenly, Elf's companions appear, expressing their desire to take the Valvrave and point their guns at them. Haruto wakes up in Elf's body and helps his friends escape by shooting the other 4 Dorshan spies. After getting into a safe zone, Haruto explains the truth and proves to be himself in Elf's body. Later, Haruto decides to take his body back and the Valvrave that were both captured by Dorsha. He kills 2 enemy guards to steal a helicopter and uses it to infiltrate one of the enemy research facilities. He successfully secures his body and finds it strange that it doesn't have any injuries. After heading inside Valvrave, his friend Saki ties Haruto still in Elf's body up, and Haruto bites his original body to switch back. He then takes control of Valvrave to escape from the enemy site and enters space. The Dorshan forces manage to catch up to them and start launching their attacks to stop him, while Haruto is busy destroying enemy mecha, dodging fire and missiles. Elf takes this chance to free himself and takes Saki hostage, ordering Haruto to surrender. But he soon learns that he's considered a traitor because Haruto shot the Dorshan spies while in control of Elf's body. Suddenly, Haruto receives an unexpected call from Shoko and finds out that she is still alive. Yet, his Valvrave overheats and starts to emit a golden light. With this new power, Haruto manages to hold the enemy until the arrival of help from the Eris fleet. After returning safely, Elf is arrested and Haruto goes to meet Shoko. Still, instead of confessing his love as he promised, he laughs off and walks away, realizing that he has no right to confess after turning into a monster. In the next day, Haruto reveals his regenerating abilities to his friends and asks them to keep it a secret. Suddenly, something triggers Haruto, and he jumps on his friend Kuma trying to bite him. Saki manages to stop him with a slap and makes him turn back to normal, making him realize he's not human anymore. He meets Eris Senator Figueroa, praising him for becoming a symbol of hope. Later in the day, while expecting a future attack, Haruto helps soldiers to evacuate the school in order to save everyone from Dorsha's next attack. Haruto suddenly witnesses students panicking in the crowd, and when he turns around, he sees Elf, who escaped from the prison. Elf asks him to form a pact with him. He wants to start a revolution in Dorsia. If Haruto helps him, Elf will help him save everyone's life. Haruto refuses his offer, but before leaving, Elf tells him to give him a peace sign whenever he decides to change his mind and needs his help. Later, Haruto finds that Senator Figaro is testing the Valvrave in a random soldier and tries to stop him, but no one listens to him and the soldier gets injured in the process. The Dorsian forces suddenly appear and start their new attack module. The Senator Figaro finally shows his true colors. Instead of saving the refugees, he captures Valvrave and Haruto to take with him since he is the only one who can pilot Valvrave. His friends appear to release Haruto after noticing the senator might be lying to them. Haruto then reveals Senator Figaro's plan to the group and rushes to stop the senator, who has already opened fire at the students. Haruto fights with guards and secures Valvrave to threaten the senator and the soldiers with it. Elf appears and reminds students how Dorsian forces are ready to attack them at any time and hold their families hostage. After everyone is sound and secure, Haruto heads into space while dodging Dorsian forces' attack. He then uses his guns to free their space city from JIOR's control by destroying the connection between the two. After breaking the connection, the space city declares its independence and everyone starts to live a carefree life. A few days later, Haruto and Saki decide to explore the underground of the space city where they discover more Valvraves. He then asks her to keep this a secret between them, because he wants to prevent people from its curse. Saki promises she will keep it a secret, but in the end, she ignores Haruto's warning and pilots one of the new Valvrave, named Carmilla, resigning to be a human being. Haruto chases after her flying Carmilla with his Valvrave and convinces her to stop. In the next day, the Dorsian army attacks them once again. Saki surprises everyone by piloting a Valvrave and fights the Dorsian army with her weapon Spindle Knuckles. Haruto also joins her and fights with the enemy. The Dorsian army destroys the Eris fleet as a result, kills Senator Figaro, and uses Valvrave's weakness of fighting long-range battles to put both Haruto and Saki at disadvantage. Saki becomes scared at first but then helps Haruto to deal with the enemy missiles and force the enemy to retreat. After the battle, Haruto reveals the existence of other Valvraves to his friends and teachers, asking them to not reveal this information. Soon later, Elf takes all the girls hostage and informs Haruto in the school's announcement of how new JIOR is under his control. Haruto goes to board Valvrave to fight him, but Elf ambushes him from behind, revealing it was all a bait. Suddenly, a Dorsian military man appears and starts firing at them. Elf uses Haruto as a body shield, resulting in him getting shot several times. Elf tries to convince Adre that Haruto is a critical part of his plan to liberate Dorsia. Qvir, one of Elf's former squad members, intervenes with his mecha and starts firing aimlessly, killing Aina, one of Haruto's friends. Elf pulls out a lever and sends Qvir's mecha back into space. He then heads to Haruto and offers him to switch their bodies so he can fight with Dorsian forces, to which he agrees. Haruto then joins the battle in Elf's body to aid Saki, who's been struggling to fight the Dorsian forces. With Elf predictions and instructions written on notes, Haruto fires at enemy units with accuracy and agility, disabling their electromagnetic boomerang launcher and forcing the enemy army to retreat. Later, he finds a picture of a girl from Elf's pocket and starts to randomly cry after looking at the picture, as if he can also feel the host's body's real memories and emotions. After the battle, Elf wakes up and informs Haruto's group that they have 6 hours until Dorsia's next attack, reminding Haruto of their pact. Haruto starts to be blamed by Kuma for Aina's death, but they stop because the Dorsian army appears once again and resumes their attacks. This time they're completely prepared and even using Navy ships to infiltrate Academy. Haruto and Saki head out into space to deal with enemies. He starts to smash the enemy's mechas, but soon they both face trouble in dodging electromagnetic boomerangs. On the verge of losing, Haruto communicates with Elf and finally forms a pact with him, deciding to put his trust in him. With Elf's strategy and their teamwork, he counterattacks and gains the upper hand, and fires at a specific point on JIOR's module that unleashes the seawater. As a result, it cools down his Valvrave and also makes enemy Navy ships sink in the sea. Later, Haruto starts to charge his Valvrave up to overheated until it starts to emit the golden light. He then uses its power and strikes the enemy's fleet with his Harakiri blade, defeating Dorsian forces. After the battle, the space city heads toward a neutral territory safe from Dorsia named Moons. Haruto trusts Elf and lets him decide on their strategic planning so they can minimize their casualties. But he loses control once again, forcing Elf to punch him and bring him back to a normal state. A few days later, the Dorsian squadrons attack once again. but they struggle to breach the defenses because of Elf's newly created barrier system, military training, and organized defense formation. Haruto and Saki head out to fight the Dortian forces and follow the retreating enemy's fleet, but soon realize that the enemy has lured them out and another Dortian fleet is ready to attack the space city. The Dortian forces fire their missiles and lasers, as a result, stopping them from protecting everyone. On the other side, the enemy fires a cannon to blow the space city. But before a tragedy occurs, Kuma and Yamada appear using a valve raid to save the city and destroy the Dortian fleet to retreat. After their return, Haruto in anger tries to punch Elf for pushing other students to pilot the valve raids. On the next day, while in the elevator, Haruto loses control again and attacks Takahi. But Saki manages to stop him in time and takes him outside, telling him she will kill him if he ever becomes a beast. A few days later, Haruto meets up with Saki and they go on a date. Suddenly, the Dortian unit attacks them once again and all 4 pilots join the battle. Elf instructs them to move to a specific coordinate, making the enemy thinks they are running away, forcing the enemy to break their formation to catch them. Haruto and his group take this opportunity and strike the enemy with the laser. Elf tells Haruto that he only needs to use his Harakiri blade at right time, and he will be able to annihilate them in one strike. Haruto waits for the right moment, and Haruto destroys the fleet with his Harakiri blade. Suddenly, Captain Kane drills into the space city from below and releases his men to invade the city. Haruto decides to head inside and wait for his valve rave to cool down and asks Saki to marry him before leaving. Saki refuses his proposal and tells him to save Shoko. After heading inside, Elf informs him that his teacher, Captain Kane, is the mastermind behind all this, and also tells him that the enemy is releasing poisonous gas with the drill, which will result in the whole space city being filled with gas if the drill reaches the surface. They both go to retrieve his valve rave and find Kane there. Haruto tries to stop Kane from taking his valve rave, but Kane shoots and injures Haruto. Elf tries to punch Kane, but he easily fends off his attack and knocks him down. Haruto holds Kane so Elf can run away, but Adre shows up and points his gun at him. Both of them are on the verge of death, when suddenly a valve rave appears piloted by the most antisocial girl and genius hacker in school, Akira. Using her valve rave weapon, she hacks and destroys all enemy mechas and the drilling machine, forcing the enemy to fight themselves. In the process, she also frees Haruto and Elf, who now have the chance to fight back and take valve raid. They get into the mecha and Haruto fires his lasers to kill Kane. But as soon as they are about to confirm their victory, they notice Kane floating in the sky. Kane starts to glow and flies toward a broken valve rave. He somehow activates this broken valve raid and starts flying it, while it takes a new humanoid form. Haruto and Elf are shocked, and they finally realize that Kane isn't also human. Watch this next video. See you on the next one.